Hello, welcome to the start of a new series. This is going to be, what is this going to be? People Under the Stairs. This is a Disciples game with Domains Enhanced and 7 teams. My team was fortunate enough to have the second pick in the draft, and we picked Myrnion. And then we wheeled Naba. So this is definitely, at least on paper, a very powerful team. A brief national overview of the two nations, and I'll show our pretenders. So let's start with the pretender for Myrnion. I'm going to have my awesome teammate Kosi, and I know they've been pretty excited to roll Naba in an environment like this. We've allied together in past games and chatted a bunch, so I think this should be the beginning of a good partnership. So yeah, let's look at what we got here for Myrnion. You've got overall solid troops and mediocre mages with some neat tricks available to them. So we've got basic scout, we've got our assassin. We do have national assassins, which are pretty useful. This guy does not have much in terms of like the Abyssian assassin. The Slayer can just slay things pretty much at will without even needing any gear. The assassin will often kill things with his poison dagger, but just as often die unless you give him like some protection gear or something. But later on, it's really easy to gear out an assassin to be a giant pain in the ass without too much investment. We've got this spy here. He can also seduce female commanders, which can come up sometimes. But yeah, he's a spy, so he'll automatically see what thrones are which. He'll pick up people's score graphs, things like that. Kind of pricey, and this nation is short on gold. But I'm still going to want a few of those. We've got the Friar. This guy is a stealthy, cheap priest. Is definitely an upgrade over Indie Priest. He's not like amazing by any stretch of the imagination, but he's good for what he is. And then the Paladin. These guys are baller. They can bless themselves and others. Combat caster means not too much, although you can do some tricks with items and combat caster. But overall, they just are a solid chassis, not too expensive for what they are, and they also get access to some of the national holy spells. We've got the Initiate. This guy is an incredibly cheap researcher. He doesn't do anything else. Like Fire 1 is pretty much useless in combat, but uber cheap researcher means that he's going to be the core of my research, and he's going to get a lot of research done for me. Inquisitor, not going to be recruiting too many of these guys because they are frail and old, and Fire 1, like, they can bless my dudes, I guess. They're good leaders, but you have to jump through hoops to make sure that they don't just get shot in the face, and that makes them a little less useful. I'm skipping ahead to the High Inquisitor, which is like the Inquisitor. He's cap only, but he's holy 3. So this guy can just divine bless the whole army, so I want like one of these, especially since with this being disciples, I'm not going to have a prophet. So we'll have one of these guys to go around and bless armies. Also, the Inquisitor ability, this is very good for spreading our dominion. We're going to be taking a relatively low candle score, and we're going to make up for that partially by preaching other people out. The Witch Hunter is my core combat mage, and he is expensive for what he is. I got to pay almost 200 gold for 2 fire, 1 astral, which, like, for comparison, if you play as Zongtupka, a Sun Priest is 1 fire, 1 astral, and costs just 100 gold. Or if you play as Ind, you can get your Femini sorceresses, which I don't even get many of those as Ind, and those are cheaper than Witch Hunters. Granted, Witch Hunter has Priest 1, which, like the Ind example, does not have, but still, these guys are pricey. Nevertheless, you work with what you got, and these are what I've got. They can communion, they can do fire stuff. They do have the perfect paths for a couple of non-communion things. If I can find like Amazon or Crystal Shamans or something, so that basically I'm not having these guys, these expensive guys, being communion slaves, then I'll be really happy. Architects, so I do have a mason that lets me upgrade forts, and this will be particularly valuable because my teammate is Naba, and Naba gets expensive, time-consuming forts that aren't actually any better than non-giant forts. So if we can handle the micro of it, what we're going to try to do is have me build citadels for my partner rather than my partner going through the construction. Just because, like, I can build citadels and then hand them over, and they'll be better than if my partner tried to build them themselves. Already talked about High Inquisitor. Last we got the Grandmaster. This guy is expensive and frail, but he's got baller paths. Fire 3, Astral 2, and a random. The random here is my only way on my recruitable mages of getting something other than fire and astral. So after the early game, I'm going to be spamming these out of my cap just to try to break out into things. Then we've got our troops. I'm going to skip the ends for now, work on the middle ones first. We've got crossbows. That's a nice trick to have, and it works well with fire magic. So that'll be fun. Got the swordsmen. These guys are generally, like, they're better than heavy infantry from indies, which isn't saying a lot. They're solid. Halberdy is basically the same story. They trade a bit of stats for castle defense. Pikeneers, similar story. A bit lower stats and damage, but they can repel maybe, although with attack 10 they're not going to repel very much. Overall, I'm going to try to avoid recruiting these guys as much as possible. Man-at-Arms, these guys have pretty solid stats, and they have Bodyguard ability, although you do pay a decent amount more for them. Then the Royal Guard. Royal Guard is actually pretty good cavalry. These guys also have Bodyguard and 21 protection. Attack and defense are solid. Overall, like, these are pretty good cavalry. That said, I'm going to be avoiding most of those, like infantry and the Royal Guards. Why? Because there is the crown jewel of the nation, the Knight of the Chalice. These guys are recruit anywhere. They're not cap only, and they're baller sacred cavalry. Their stats are actually a little bit worse than the Royal Guard, but once they take the bless, then the gloves come off. Then finally we got these Flagellus. These guys don't even need a fort. They are cheap sacreds. They're naked, but they do hit pretty hard because this flail gets +2 attack versus shields and attacks twice. So these are kind of suicide bombers that can rush in and dish out a lot of damage if they don't get, like, nuked by evocations or a strong wind. Nothing special about my starting sites. And then finally, The big reason to play these, especially in Disciples, bonus bless points. So we are going to be using those bonus bless points to get a pretty sweet bless. And I'll just go ahead and build out the chassis that we're going to use, and then we'll switch over to look at Naba. So with Disciples, you, even more so than in a regular game, you want to make sure that someone can go out and do, like, someone has a powerful unit that can act like a super combatant on the battlefield. And that will not actually be my partner, that will be me. The best option for Mignon, that also takes advantage of the bless points, is probably the Angelic Lord. This guy is a baller chassis with built-in flight, invulnerability, awe, and fire shield. But we will not be using the Angelic Lord. We will be using the Great Archon. He's a bit cheaper, and he has earth instead of air. He gets real protection rather than natural protection, and he comes with some armor. He has Inspiring Researcher, so after he's done doing a bit of expanding and fighting, he can stay at home and help us research. And he is a Full Metal Alchemist. So, like, those are neat abilities to have around. He's got serpents where his legs would be, and he has this flail that has 2 attacks. As I mentioned, he is not as powerful in combat as the Angelic Lord, but he can definitely solo expand to many provinces. So let's go ahead and build out what we're going to have here. Mignon, I feel, needs nature. Other people may disagree, but I feel pretty strongly about this. You need either poison resistance or regen. Just because otherwise, like, once Foul Vapors comes on, then all of your horses die. And your horses were expensive. Additionally, nature in Demon's Enhanced lets you break into a bunch of other paths. You can summon trolls to break into death. You can summon your daemons to break into air. Like, nature is just... And also, like, there's so much stuff where, like, we'll want thug gear, and if I have someone who has at least nature 2, they can make a Thistle Mace and give that to indies, and then the indie will be nature 2 and be able to actually make shit. So, go ahead and fill that in there. Witch Hunters can cast Solar Eclipse pretty easily, so we're going to take Low Light Vision to take advantage of that. Heat Aura, so that these Paladins can burn people. Reinvigoration, which will be for my partner. And then Twist Fate. Or not Twist Fate, sorry. Fate Weaving. This is going to combo with Heat Aura, because Fate Weaving means when someone tries to hit you, they roll poorly, and when they roll poorly against the Heat Aura, then they get burnt. We're going to go ahead and move our candles up to 5, and we talked about Inquisiting. Also, like, this will be less of a limit on Sacreds, because my partner's Sacreds are good, but they're not insane. Like, they're Sacred Troop Recruits, and temples from both sides of the team count for upping the Sacred limit, so we'll pretty easily push that up to 6 or 7. And with mine being any fort Sacreds, I will still be able to make plenty. Now, we're 114 points in the hole, so the first thing we're going to do is ramp the heat up. I don't like that very much, but my partner has Heat 2 native, so go ahead and throw them a bone. Something has to go, and for us that's going to be luck. That'll let us buy a couple points of magic. And then the last 3 scales, if we go ahead and look at the troops again, these guys are pretty resource intensive. They cost a lot of recruitment points as well, but we are going to take 2 points of turmoil and use those to buy 1 point each of productivity and growth. Now, I know, like, these choices may seem weird to people. Like, many people would dispute my taking the poison stuff. If I didn't get that, then I could buy 3 more scales, which could pump me up to growth 3 and productivity 2, for example, or like remove one of those points of turmoils. But as a team, we're going to be really happy that I have nature. I'm pretty confident about that. Additionally, that'll make this guy much more survivable in expansion, reduce the risk for error, because he'll be able to cast regen on himself. Growth 1. Growth 1 is a choice. Obviously, like, growth 3 would be nice. That said, our team needs magic more than it needs growth. And we can, midway through the game, get our growth up to growth 3, although we will have missed out on some of the compounding in the meantime. How can we do that? Well, since we have nature on a god, can cast Erect Graven Idol, which summons this guy, and he can in turn cast where is it? Yeah, Blessing of Gaia, since he is a plant. So once I have Construction 5, Enchantment 5, which is mid-game, don't get me wrong, like, it's not something we're going to have early, but once I have that, then I can free Marignon from its growth issues, as well as any other high-value provinces. And the idol is not a waste. Like, it's good for forging and rituals and stuff like that, so I won't be sad to have it. Speaking of which, let's go ahead and look at our national spells here. Our holy spells do not show up in here, but we have a holy spell that gives the caster extra armor, and a holy spell that gives the caster armor-piercing weapons. Those are both very good for paladins. And then the other big stuff is in Conjuration. So Conjuration 3, we can summon 3 paladins, and we are definitely going to do that quite a bit. Conjuration 4, we can summon these Battle Saints, and we'll see them when they come out. They are sacred and immortal, so the goal would be to just have some of these guys keep causing problems. We get a ton of fire gems, so the fact that these cost 4 per paladin and these cost 20 per battle saint is not that big a concern. Later on, we get Harbingers. These guys have Air 3, so that is a way to break into air in a good way. And then this makes an Archangel, which is Fire 4. This summons Angel Fury, which is a Thug Chassis with Blood Vengeance. And this one summons the Angel Fury. This one is like a remote assassination spell. Then I have Personal Global. So this makes candles and flatulence. Probably not going to actually put this up because it's ultra expensive and we don't have enough candles to really benefit from it, but it's a thing. And then later on here, we've got a spell to make a Seraph and a spell to make a unique Archangel. Although this is extremely hard to pull off for me because I'd need a holy booster on a Grandmaster. Or I guess, like, after I've made a Seraph, then the Seraph can summon this guy, but that's a lot of pearls. We have a combustion spell, yippee. This lets you turn diseased dudes into candles, which is a choice. I think it does combo with the Battle Saints, so that's the thing. This is an anti-undead fire spell, so like 7 armored piercing damage is not going to do very much to most troops. They'll have enough armor to resist that. But versus undead, they will have a harder time. And it does also have a long distance. I do want to call out Flaming Meteor. This is something that every Witch Hunter can cast 3 times, and it drops like it's like a mini Gifts from Heaven. So a 50 damage meteor on 1 square, as well as some fatigue in the area. So that will definitely be part of the plan. Yeah, not doing Magma Burst. Fire Cloud is also a thing we can do. And since we have Heat Aura, which gives our troops fire resistance, it'll be a one-sided thing. Already called out the unique thing in construction. Well, I guess it's not unique, but the thing that's for us. Nothing enchantment. Thaumaturgy will do a bit of Thaumaturgy stuff, like if we need Soul Slay, for example, then we gotta go up Thaumaturgy and get it. But we will see if that's actually necessary. I'm hoping to mostly avoid Thaumaturgy, just because it's not really something that I can get a ton of benefit from. Like, it's not really part of my build, I guess. Gateway is really powerful, so that's something that we'll want to aim for later on. But I don't really want to rush it, I guess. And then we're not doing anything with blood. So that is going to be the plan for Marignan. Our god's name will be Nobody Expects the Spanish. Not saying Inquisition, because it will be genies for Naba. Speaking of which, let's go ahead and move over to Naba. Naba is an incredibly powerful nation. They're a lot of fun to play. Let's go ahead and look at their troops. We've got their scout is recruit anywhere, including, like, they don't even need a fort. So any place that they have conquered, they can get a 20 gold scout, which is just ridiculously good. There's these camels that can also be recruited anywhere. No fort necessary. They're stealthy. They're pillagers. They're tax collectors, which is a neat power for raiding forces. And they also summon 1d3 falcons at the start of battle, which is powerful because the falcons will show up at the beginning and fly to the back and fuck with enemy mages. They also have composite bows, which is a nice ranged weapon for Naba. We'll get to more on that later. This general, when I play Naba, I don't recruit pretty much any of these guys. They're not stealthy, which is a disadvantage they have over many of the other guys. Their stats are solid, they have good leadership, but they're just outclassed by many of the other choices. Creep. This is a cheap, efficient researcher. Earth 1 can't really do very much in combat, but they are cheap. They can also sneak around and preach or bless if that's something that we need to do. Mookareebs. These are more expensive than the Kareebs, but I would take them every time. They can join communions, either slave or master. They have a lot of HP and a mild amount of armor, which means that they're not just going to get one shot by some random arrow. Holy 2 is really good. They can also lead 40 troops, which is enough for them to lead out an early game squad and bless them. Fortune Teller helps prevent against bad events. And they can also do Holy Communions pretty easily to pull off stuff like Divine Wrath and such. So these guys are really good. When I play Naba, like, these are my primary mage recruit. Janimirs. These guys are quite thuggable, especially the ones like this guy can random fire, air, or earth. The air and earth ones can thug right out of the box with minimal gear, like maybe just a vine shield and a frostbrand or a spear and a pearl, either of which are very easy to craft. They are great leaders. So 4 squads, 125 dudes. These guys are good. They're pricey, but you are getting a lot of value out of them. These guys, similar story to the Janimirs. They have better paths, although they do not have holy, so they cannot bless themselves. This random could be fire, earth, or astral, not air, interestingly. These can be recruited at all of the forts, and they do require 4 recruitment points. So these are a nice way to make more thugs out of any place. And then the crown jewel, the Malika. These guys are cap only, and they are glorious. They all can iron skin themselves. They fly. They're ethereal even without having to cast Body of Flames. They have magic power, and since we have magic 2, that means they get +2 to all of their stats, at least in our own dominion. They're naked right now, but they're going to get some armor and weapons given to them pretty often. And these guys can do thug expands right out of the gate. They can also, they'll ensure that no sites are unsearched. They do have a vulnerability to salt, and the other players in this game are good enough that they're going to know to try to exploit that vulnerability. But because they're ethereal and stealthy and flying, they can show up like wherever the salt isn't. And if our opponents are going to truly like gear out everybody with salt to try to fight these guys, well, that's a lot of salt. Also, if they do that approach, these Sahirs, their kind of little cousin, these do not have vulnerability to salt. So these guys can still take out whatever is being deployed to counter Malikas, potentially. Last, we've got this Hermit. He cannot be recruited in forts. He's inexpensive. He's got good paths. 4 paths. He's stealthy. He comes with a dog. That said, I'm not a big fan of these guys. Like, if I have a naked lab that is in a safe spot, then sure, I'll set it recruiting them. But the fact that you only get 1 every 4 turns means that I'm not going to... I wouldn't rely on them very much. And then units. These Desert Warriors can be recruited anywhere, and they are cheap short bows. They are undisciplined, which means that you have to be careful where you place them so that they actually get the Flaming Arrow, Desert Winds buff. But they're still like cheap short bows on a nation with fire and air are good. I never recruited a Nabaean soldier. I never recruit a light infantry. Camels. These, similar to their commander version, these can be recruited anywhere, no fort necessary, and they're basically the same unit except not a commander. So they come with free birds. They shoot a composite bow. They're stealthy. They're glorious. These are really good units. They don't have good protection, but if they're shooting flaming arrows at people, then they don't necessarily need that. The Archer is very good. Reason being that this guy is just a tank. He's got 18 protection before you even like put buffs like Wooden Warriors or Iron Warriors and stuff like that on him. And he shoots great bows that will be flaming, at a considerable distance. So these guys are really solid. Light infantry, I don't really bother with these guys. They're not bad, but I don't see a reason to recruit them when you can recruit the archers. And same story with the elite soldiers. Like, these guys hit harder and they have better stats, but the fact that the archers will just stay back and dish out damage while not receiving it is a really nice point in their favor. Then here's the Sacred. These guys are stealthy, glamored, so those are both really powerful abilities. These are pretty inexpensive for what they are. Like, 40 gold isn't cheap, but it's not expensive either. Solid stats. They'll pick up the Bless. They have Bodyguard if that matters. These are cap only, but when I play as Naba, my cap is basically constantly recruiting them, just because having a large stack of scary sacreds is always a nice threat to be able to deploy. Naba has interesting magic sites. So there's this one, which just gives you your recruits and most of your gems. This one, which gives water for some reason. None of Naba's actual recruits have water. And increases growth. So that means that this site is going to nudge Naba's capital growth higher than than what the scales ordinarily would say. Which means, for all practical purposes, that my partner is going to be hovering at 2 or 3 growth, even though we only took 1. And then this guy just gives you 100 gold per turn, so that's a nice perk. Let's move on to Naba's... Well, let's actually show you the disciple that he's going to pick, and then we'll go to their spells. So he is going to pick the Stone Magus. There's a guide on the wiki, Balls 150 proof Naba, and my partner is going to be going for that type of strategy, so he's going to use this guy's Mason ability to level up the castle in Naba's capital to a citadel. And what that means is instead of getting one of these every 2 turns, it'll be 3 every 4 turns. So just spamming out these guys and having them cause trouble. My partner is just going for 2 across the board, except for extra earth, and yeah, he wasn't able to afford another another path somewhere else. Although, yeah, 4 earth is nice for putting up globals and some foraging stuff. These ensure that he'll be able to forge any booster he can't forge already. And yeah, like this guy will also do some site searching and maybe some blood hunting, which is not the best use of a disciple, maybe, but like it's to be able to have a budget version of Akashic Knowledge is not bad. Let's see. What else? Yeah, so this is the one that he picked, as I mentioned, for the Mason ability. And he's mostly going to be researching it first until he levels up the castle. There were some other options we were considering. The first other option is the Mullock. This is just a baller chassis. Like, he can expand naked, and he has 20 protection without armor, so he can easily get above 30. He comes with some free imps, so those just fly to the back and cause trouble. He has Fire Shield, Fear. Since he's a disciple, he picks up the Bless. He does not do the capital level up thing, and his paths cost extra. So what we would have done if we'd gone with the Mullock would have been some nature and some water. So something like this. This lets him regen and moss body. He could potentially also quicken self, although he has to be careful because that's always a fatigue sink. Nature 2 also lets you forge the boosters and stuff like that. So this would have been a fine choice as well. This is obviously much more of an expansion combat choice as opposed to a long-term growth choice. But it's one of the options. Another option we were considering is this Sahira. She is basically a super Malika, and the reason she's a super Malika is because she has all of the stats and abilities of a Malika, but also can get new paths at 20 per. So we were probably going to do something like I want to say, yeah, this is what we drew up. So this pathing, she could cast any self buff in the game, basically. She could forge earth boots and wear them to forge a staff of elemental mastery. She has fire and death. She can make skulls of fire. Overall, like, this is actually the way that I was leaning. My partner didn't make a bad choice by any means. This is just more exciting to me, because this girl with these paths can do it all. That said, we'll be fine. Or at least I hope we'll be fine. So if you are playing Naba, particularly as a disciple, I guess only as a disciple, I recommend trying her out because, yeah, you can make something like this happen, and that's pretty glorious. One thing I do want to mention about the Mason, one trick that we were considering doing was, since I have architects myself, letting me borrow the capital of Naba and use my architect to put up a citadel in there. That said, that takes a lot of turns where he's not recruiting Malika, so he ultimately decided not to go with that path, and that's totally okay. Alright, finally, let's look at magic. So, Conjuration, the first big thing from Conjuration is Contact Jinn. This summons a ethereal, stealthy, unseen commander, which is like 18 gems for one of these is a pretty good rate. These guys are good. They can fly around, fire 2, air 2 is definitely enough to thug, and they can gear themselves to take advantage of the fact that they're invisible. Next we've got the Jinn Warriors. These guys are expensive. Honestly, like they're good. They're not hugely overcosted, but whenever I've played Naba, I've not bothered summoning Jinn Warriors just because there's other things I've wanted to do with the fire gems. This summons a bunch of dogs. I don't really bother with them too much. This is an interesting one. This commander has Fire 2, Air 2, Nature 2. So that is a good way to ensure that you have more Nature 2 guys as Naba. These guys are... I don't remember them very well. I can't say that I actually did very much with the Silots when I played as Naba. They're not bad by any means. Air gems are just super valuable, and I like the Houris break you into new paths in the way that the slots do not. These are also not sacred, which is annoying, although they do have seduction, so take of that what you will. These bins are also some type of dog creature. You need to have Water 1, Air 1 to even summon them. So at this point, like, it's only the Disciple that would be able to do so. But they're solid creatures. Marids are glorious super combatants. Like, they're awesome. And then Suleiman, he can do it all. He's got, let me look up his paths real quick. Yeah, he's got Fire 4, Air 3, Earth 2. He can, if he's got nothing better to do for some reason, he can just free spawn a Djinn Warrior each turn. He's got all of the standard stuff. So, Sacred, Unseen, Ethereal, Flying, yada yada yada. He is definitely worth the price, even if that price is a lot. And then this Release the Father of Djinn. I did not, like, when I played as Naba, the game was won prior to that guy coming out, but he's just ridiculous. 200 HP, 30 invulnerability, Blood Vengeance, Fire 5, Air 5, Earth 4, Holy 4. I mean, he's what you'd expect from a level 9 summon that costs 150 gems. So if you want one of the closest things that Dominions has to a super combatant, then this guy does fit the bill. Alteration. I want to call out Desert Winds. We can cast it easily. It's really fucking good for Naba. It's basically Wind Guide and Flaming Arrows in one spell. It's really easy to just carry around a Fire in the Jar and have this at all combats for all your dudes. And it only requires Alteration 3, which he is going to rush out anyways for his thugs. Solar Eclipse is a good option. He has dudes that can see in the dark, and not everyone else can. Then there's the usual stuff. Evocation. So there's this Scorching Wind here that does a lot of fatigue damage to whoever it is able to hit. And then at level 6, there's Smokeless Flame, and this is glorious. Only precision, like, think of it like Flaming Meteor or Gifts from Heaven, except it is not inaccurate, which means that excuse me, you can buff the hell out of the precision of whomever's going to cast it and have them just nuke one square, no questions asked, as well as start some other people on fire. Nothing particularly noteworthy in construction. Enchantment, there's this Consecrate Block spell. What this does is it's twice born for some of the genies like Malaka's, except that instead of twice borning them as a murderer, it twice borns them as a rock. So you get to keep the paths on a rock that can now defend your homeland, but is not going to go out and conquer anymore, which is fine. It's something to consider if you got the fire gems to spare. And then in Thaumaturgy, we've got Awaken Djinn block. This summons a cheap rock that can't actually like forge or cast rituals, but it can defend territory really well, because this is a hard to destroy rock. So that's definitely something to do to like entrench your power. And then blood. Naba has some unique blood spells. And there's some quality here. So there's these ghouls that regenerate a ton. There's these gadders that let them break into more paths or like recruit more blood, because many of these have blood. I think the Gulas here all have blood. These Ifrits are powerful units. They're basically like genies that you summon with blood slaves instead of with fire jumps. And then these Shaitans, which are powerful corruptors. They can do super combatant stuff, although they're not sacred. But basically, you have them go around corrupting your opponent's best commanders and get yourself a bunch of free mages. So that is Naba. That is our team plan. We're going pretty heavy in on our bless, and we're sacrificing some scales, which is a trade-off that I think is worth it. Give ourselves some early game power, particularly since my partner is not choosing a combative disciple chassis, so we'll get our other early game power in another means. Will probably be pretty scary to other teams, just because this is a powerful combination. We'll probably run into lots of fire resistance because, both of us deploy a lot of fire, and our opponents know that, and they're going to want to have a plan for that. The way that this Disciples game is going to work is, as I mentioned, there are 7 teams. Each team has one quote-unquote expert and one intermediate player. And the reason I say quote-unquote expert is because I got drafted for this based off my hours of playtime, despite the fact that I don't really feel like an expert. So you be the judge. In any case, the two of us are going to team up, and nobody expects the Spanish genies. Thanks for watching, and tune in for turn 1.